Hey people. Today I think we'll go back to the past and review those websites that sucked ass. I want to take a look at weirdnj.com from November 20th, 2001, courtesy of the Wayback Machine. When I was but a boy, I moved from the city out to the Pine Barrens of New Jersey. And it was a very big change of scenery for me, as you could imagine. From one of the biggest cities in the country to literally nothing, a bunch of trees. I remember I would have trouble sleeping at night when I first moved out there. I was 9 years old because there was no helicopters, there was no screaming outside, there were no gunshots, there was nothing like that. How am I supposed to sleep in complete silence? All I can hear is the fucking bugs. The frogs, the toads, man. It's weird. Sounded like Jurassic Park. And it would creep me out. I needed screaming and helicopters and stuff in the middle of the night. I needed to find used condoms laying on the sidewalk outside the house. It was normal until I moved to the Pine Barrens. It's a whole different vibe. I spent a lot of time on this website researching all the stupid things. There's a magazine, Weird NJ, might be aware of it. There was like series for a bunch of other states too. Weird US was a thing. They were associated with the History Channel, I think, for a while there. But this is just true and honest stories from the inhabitants of New Jersey. Obviously, Jersey Devil country. I don't know if we'll go into that here. It's a little too obvious for something like this, I think. I want to do a whole stream about the Jersey Devil reports of 1909, when everybody in Jersey saw them. And they basically had to close all the schools down because there was too much Jersey Devil happening. But for now, I think we might just go through this list of stuff. Let me pull up the old YouTube. I haven't been able to find my chat, so if I wasn't reading your chats, it's because I'm an idiot and I put an extension on YouTube that makes sure that I can never see your chats. Sorry. What can I say except I'm an idiot? So if you're out there, give me a whoop whoop as we go through weird stories from the underbelly of Jersey, baby. Alright, let's start with only go there at night. We've got a broken image, but I can still click the links in here, I believe. We'll click them. The Devil's Tower, baby. Located in Alpine, New Jersey, is a local legend known as the Devil's Tower. On a recent drive-by, the stone clock tower looked to be unassuming enough to us, but the devil does work in mysterious ways. There seem to be several different, yet similar tales of evil edifice, and just how to conjure up its spirits. Here are just a few of the dozens of stories that our readers have told us about its unholy place. The Big Stone Tower at one time housed evil rituals by Satanists early in the century. Some evil tragedy happened, and after the group's demise, there have been several attempts to tear it down, but to no avail. Some say work crews have died in the attempt. As with most sites like this, it became a popular destination for teens in the 70s, and friends of mine who had been inside reported encountering mysterious gusts of cold wind that sent them screaming for their cars. Another reader emailed us a slightly different version of the tower's legend. As you approach it, you can almost see people in the windows of the tower. When you get there, according to what I have heard, witnessed, and attempted myself, you are to drive your car around the tower in reverse 3 times. After the third, when you come to a full circle, turn off your car and headlights, and the ghost of a woman should approach you. This hasn't happened yet, but I and others have seen a mist start to form. After that, I don't know what is supposed to happen and what isn't. I like how a lot of these instructions, they sound like how you, catch Peekaboo in Pokemon. You know what I mean? Like, first you do this, then you do this, then you do this 3 times, then you do this 100 times, and then you press the A button back and forth. Very similar. Very, very similar. Still others say 6 times around the tower is the magic number, which will raise the dead. The Devil's Tower was owned by a rich married man. He built the tower so his wife could see New York without really going to New York. One night, his wife was looking at the top of the tower, and she saw her husband with another woman, so she jumped right down the center of the tower. The husband was so upset that he stopped all the work on the tower because it was for his wife, and now his wife was dead. There was once an underground tunnel that led to the tower, and he closed it off because of stories of his wife's ghost. Now, if you drive around the tower backwards 6 times, the ghost of the wife is supposed to control your car and drive it straight into a tree. This happened to a group of teens. They were drinking all night, and when they went around it the 6th time, something controlled their car and drove it into a tree, killing a girl. From Nick Grillo. Now that happens if you drive around the CIA headquarters 6 times. They control your car and drive it right into a telephone pole. Same thing. One person told us that if you walk around it backwards 6 times at midnight, the devil himself will appear. There's a satanic graffiti on the inside walls, but the tower is now gated and locked. The doors and windows have also been sealed, leaving no entrance to the tower. According to the Alpine Historical Society, the Devil's Tower was the centerpiece of an estate called Rio Vista, which was owned by Manuel Rianda. In the first half of the 1900s, Rianda was a Spaniard who made his fortune from sugarcane plantations in Cuba. His mansion was on the cliffs, where the present-day Alpine Lookout is located. His property was the largest estate owner on the Palisades. Rianda used to delight in taking guests up to the tower, up to the top, for the view. There was an elevator. It was built sometime around World War II. Just off to one side of the tower was a chapel and ornately decorated mausoleum. Rianda's wife and sister were both interred there at one time, though their bodies were removed when Rianda died in 1943. The entire estate was subdivided years ago and was mostly just woodlands through the 70s. The name Devil's Tower probably came about around that time, and kids used to break into it and party and leave graffiti, sometimes of a satanic nature. Eventually, the tower was sealed up and large houses were built on Rianda's former property. The development is called Rio Vista. The tower is on a public road called the Esplanade, which is accessible from Route 9 West, maybe a mile north of the Tenafly Alpine border. Spooky tower, don't jump and fall. Don't drive around it, dude. It would be a mistake. You would regret it. Next. Yeah. Click that. The town of Warren, settled before the Revolutionary War, is known for its picturesque landscape, stately homes, and the tomb of the 12 nuns. It was a place I visited in my teens, says Sharon Colbeck of Bridgewater. We would cruise around, tell scary stories, and go to the tomb of the 12 nuns. Whenever somebody would find a strange place to visit, we'd have to go there. How the name came about is a mystery. The mausoleum was the grave of the Hofheimer family, who in 1915 purchased the land along with the nearby copper mine. The patriarch of the family, Nathan Hofheimer, was a founder of General Motors and resided in the house which is now the municipal building. The mausoleum is located behind the municipal building near the baseball fields, and according to George Bebbington, the local historian, no one knows whether or not there were ever any bodies interred at the site. The town recently sold the structure for $1 in hopes of removing it because of complaints of it being a lover's lane. The mausoleum was so solid only 1 stone was removed, and here it stands today. As teenagers, we weren't interested in the history of the place, says Colbeck. It was a dirt lane. You'd go late at night, usually in the rain. We were just a bunch of lunatics who wanted to get scared. Man, big fuck you on the walls. Love it. Love it. Love to see that place. Would love to spend the night there. Lock me in, daddy. What's this? Broken image. There it is. Spooky old houses in the woods. What possessed these families to suddenly move one day, leaving their furniture, clothing, and the TVs behind? That's the question Rags, a Lake Hopatcong native, asked when he and his friends stumbled into Demon's Alley, a byway off of Route 23 in West Milford. West Milford will come up again. That one is a classic in these stories. That place sucks. Late at night, strange people drive down this road very slowly, looking everywhere. They aren't cops, claims Mr. Rags. All the houses, about 8 of them, are boarded up. The odd thing about them is that someone took the time to paint each of the boards on the windows black, then painted a white shade and pull cord, complete with a ring. There have been other rumors surrounding these dwellings, including murder and Satan worship. Some of these houses are now home to thousands of bats. The property is owned by the Newark Watershed Commission and is posted and patrolled. Trespassers will be prosecuted if caught roaming the grounds. Don't walk down Demon's Alley. The Demon's Alley legend from Ralph S. I'd always heard the spot was being preserved for some historical reasons. However, recently I had brought a friend of mine who was a well-known photographer, and he was very impressed. He went back on his own to shoot some pictures, and the camera's shutter would not open. And there was nothing wrong with it. His camera's inability to work when photographing the houses made him stop at some of the small-town stores on Route 23 to try to get some more information on the stretch of houses. An old man told him quite a tale of the village. How true the story is, I investigated no further, but it is quite scary. He claimed a man moved into the town in the early 80s, who seemed to be a typical person and a normal resident. Shortly after his arrival, weird things started to happen. Small pranks, I assume. The residents suspected that it was kids coming off of Route 23 to play jokes on the odd street. The new resident decided to hold a town meeting at his house to decide what to do about the pranksters. Little did the small community know about this man's history or the plans for all the people of the town. The old-timer claimed this man had been a cult leader in the Midwest and had a large following of members. He had perpetrated the pranks in a plot to get all the town members together under the roof of his home. Once all were gathered in the downstairs, cult members stampeded from the upper levels and engaged in a massacre of every member of the town. Supposedly the cult fled and were never caught. The old man said no one in the town talks about the incident, and most deny it ever happened. We're gonna have to go there and bring it back, baby. Member by member, raise them from the dead, stuff them in the attic. Cult house, cult house. Where am I? This is gonna be the cult house, yep. 4 down on this broken image. 1, 2, 3, and 4, baby. Albino Village. If you're out there listening to this, I want to know if your town has a legend of an albino village, or maybe general freaks at all. What freaks resided in your town? I know albino village, midget village, these are really common things. So I want to know if you've got one. Where your town keeps the freaks and losers. Albino Village is a truly weird place which I visited often in my teens, says Carl S. of Paramus, New Jersey. At that time, there were only a few albino families left. We chased off the rest of them. They were difficult to spot, even when we blew our car horns and shouted. You'd think the albinos are pretty easy to spot. The albino guy, the guy who's just pearly white, baby. They were difficult to spot, even when we blew our car horns and shouted, hey, get the fuck out of here, albino retards! By the early 1960s, all that was left was the entry tunnel and a few shacks. The legend of Albino Village dates back to the early 1900s. The original settlement was called Frogtown because of its location on the Passaic River. And as one homeowner claims, was once a colony comprised of pigment-impaired individuals. During the 1950s and early 60s, when B-movies were raging with horror and atomic mutations, many a teenager would drive through the tunnel late at night with car headlights off in hopes of scaring their date and most likely annoying the neighbors. As Mr. S exclaims, you would have to fight off the urge to scream and flee after riding through the tunnel entrance. It was very scary. Oh, excuse me. Today, the site, located in Clifton, has evolved the way most of these places eventually do, upscale and unassuming, but it does have its place in Weird NJ history. Just full of albinos, that whole tunnel just crawling with them. They're like scurrying around on the roof. They're hanging by their toes to sleep at night. Strange that these people evolved to live in under a bridge like that. 2, 3, 4, and 5. The Elizabeth Orphan Asylum for crazy children with no parents. What the fuck? Something tells me that's not quite what we're doing here. Maybe it is. Maybe it is. I don't want to jump to conclusions. Vinny Parrott in the chat. Vinny Parrott in the chat. Litva Silva in the chat. Give it a whoop whoop. Vinny Parrott, how have you been hoodwinked? How? You tell me. I would not fool you. So the Elizabeth Orphan Asylum, was started in 1858 at the corner of Murray and Cherry Streets. In 1911, Mrs. John Stewart Kennedy of New York City gave the orphanage money for a new building to be built in memory of her mother, Janet Ake Edgar? Janet Ake Edgar? Sure. The new orphanage was given the name the Janet Memorial Home and was located between Salem and Westminster Avenues. The orphanage was closed in 1962, and the building was razed in 1996. But in the years prior to its demolition, the creepy old house was the site of many a late-night adventure, as these stories originally featured in Weird NJ issue 12 can attest. I am a native New Jerseyan, currently living in the Seattle area due to career priorities. However, the Garden State is still home to me, as my family and that of my wife still live there. I've always known that New Jersey has certain historical quirks. With this in mind, it became mandatory for me to fill you in on the orphanage. The orphanage truly fits into your only go there at night category, or would if it were still there. It was the ultimate late night thrill in our area, similar to Devil's Tower and Demon's Alley, basically our local haunted house. Picture about an acre or two of land surrounded by a high fence with a large, threatening-looking 3-story building in the middle. Side note, there's also an old abandoned schoolhouse next to it, which started off as a governor's mansion near the turn of the century. From what I hear from friends who have been in it, this structure is still amazingly ornate and beautiful inside. The orphanage was located near Keene College on Westminster Road in Elizabeth, next to some low-income housing units. I don't know anything about its owners, or of any orphans who live there. What I do know officially, or so I'm told, is that it was known as the Janet Memorial Orphanage, and even its indisputable history has some odd quirks about it. First of all, at some time in the 1970s, a small private airplane crashed onto the property. Then the top floor was partially destroyed by a fire a few short years afterwards. This caused the building to be condemned, but strangely enough, never repaired or demolished for almost a decade, if not longer. This is when the weirdness began. People started ignoring the no trespassing signs posted after the condemnation and going inside. The homeless used it as a place to squat. Stories began to circulate about mysterious sub-basements used for satanic rituals. You were supposed to find rows of coffins down there, and if you opened one, your doppelganger would be inside. Balls of light following people around corridors, mysterious noises were heard, and guardian angels appearing on the property. The stories for the cause of the fire that destroyed most of the top floor were equally startling. Depending on who you heard it from, satanic nuns, a psychotic pedophile janitor, or assorted demons, or all of the above were responsible. They did it. By the time I got around to going inside of it, which must have been around 1990, the back gate was practically lying on the ground from so many people constantly jumping it. I remember that as we entered through the back, there was a rusty skeletal-like chandelier. To the left was a room with a fireplace, and on the wall above the fireplace someone had spray-painted, "Welcome to Hell." To the right was a big open room, perhaps a solarium. Straight ahead was a staircase. There was indeed a basement with a shaft for a service elevator, which is what I believe inspired the stories about sub-basements. All of the room's walls were graffiti-ridden and cracking apart. I'm not claiming that it was truly supernatural, but the whole place definitely gave you a feeling of true and unbridled dread. Once again, we're hearing about Satanists. Obviously, Satanists are a big part of, like, urban myths and, you know, local legends. That's always in it. But here you have this place that supposedly has, like, sub-basements for, like, dead children. The whole place was paid for by the Kennedy family. I don't know. Could be Illuminati. Wouldn't write it off. The cops would occasionally patrol the area, presumably when neighbors complained, which they must have done a lot. But I've never seen or heard of them actually going inside to bring anyone out. One time, several friends and I were chased off the property by cops, and we found that we were all quite the fence-jumping acrobats when our asses were on the line. I was saddened to hear that the building was demolished a couple of years back, after I'd moved out west. However, the aforementioned abandoned schoolhouse supposedly still sits where it always has. Also, there used to be something similar in Menlo Park, across from Menlo Park Mall and behind the Rickles hardware store. This was an abandoned hospital. Naturally, local legend among teenagers referred to it more specifically as a mental hospital. It had been left empty for a few years after the staff and equipment were moved to a newer building next door. I only went up to it once, but I remember driving into the back parking lot where it looked like a tornado had hit. All sorts of debris littered the place, which was dark and foreboding. Quite a bit like the orphanage. I remember that the most noticeable thing was a gurney, in fairly good shape in the middle of the parking lot, and that my friends and I thought this downright creepy at the time. What unseen demons might be plotting to tie one of us down to it and whisk us away into its hellish interior? We never went inside, as the area was constantly patrolled by police. By Al Eufrasio. The green glow at the old orphanage. Several years back, during my high school days, it was not uncommon for my friends and I to take a trip over to the Elizabeth Orphanage out of pure boredom. I'm referring to the one located on Westminster Avenue, on the border of Hillside and Elizabeth. On one occasion, while climbing down from a flight of stairs late at night, I had glanced to my far left. What caught my eye was that instead of seeing total darkness, a strange green light hovered at the opposite end of the hallway. Doubting what my eyes were witnessing before me, I quickly turned to a friend who was descending the stairs behind me and asked him if he noticed the light as well. After he confirmed that indeed there was a eerie glow at the end of the hall, we briefly observed it from afar, then quickly left the building. Just recently, while talking with a friend, I learned that others had also seen a strange green glow in the orphanage before its demise in mid-1997. Have you ever heard of sightings similar to mine in which a green light has been seen lurking around the orphanage halls? The previous stream I did, Jack Klassen being assaulted by aliens, he also talked about green lights. We mentioned how green lights seem to be a bad omen, and a lot of weird paranormal stories. Thanks, Damien K. Look at that building. How many children you keep fitting there? My God. Two, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6. Lay tree. This is one sinister looking tree, the caption says. Who you used to put in that tree? What that tree for? What the damn tree for? Plunet Zero in the chat. Litvasila says, no specific place for freaks in my town, but there was an insane asylum that was destroyed during World War II. Grandma told me you had all the loonies walking free long time after. So they destroyed the asylum and they just let everybody loose. I got a story kind of like that about a zoo. Same situation. Big Snoot in the chat says, what up, Ben Chad? Saw you on Tower Gang. What? Am I missing something? The hell's that mean? Talk about Devil's Tower, dude. We can go kiss in the Devil's Tower if you want. Let's go make out. Lover's Lane type shit, dude. According to the locals who told us of the legend, everyone in the vicinity of Bernard's Township seems to have a story about this sinister looking tree. We were told that at one time, a farmer killed his entire family, then went to the tree to hang himself. According to others, numerous suicides and murders occurred around that tree. This tree. The town murder tree. Supposedly, anyone who tries to cut down the unholy arbor comes to an untimely end, as it is now cursed. It is said that the souls of those killed at the spot give the tree an unnatural warmth, and even in the dead of the winter, no snow will fall around it. When Weird NJ visited the Devil's Tree, we noticed evidence that many attempts have been made over the years to take it down. The tree stands all alone in the middle of a large field off Mountain Road. Its trunk has been severely scarred by axes and chainsaws, some wounds appearing to be quite old. Why no one has yet been successful in felling the evil oak we cannot say for sure, nor do we know what has become of those who have tried. One Weird NJ reader described the Devil's Tree to us this way. There's a big field, and right near the road is the tree. It's the only thing in the field. Supposedly it's a portal to hell, and a sentinel guards it. He drives an old black Ford or Chevy pickup truck, and will chase you down the road until a certain point. You will see headlights 1 second, and the next, nothing. The car is just gone. My friend has had the old black truck chase him several times down the road, and then it was just gone. We have had it chase us, but we were in a Firebird GTA, and we were out of there too quickly. Another local told us that the inherent unholiness of the Devil's Tree is the result of the evil that men do, and nothing supernatural at all. There's a very evil truth to the mythology of the Devil's Tree. At one time, Bernard's Township was one of the central headquarters of the KKK in New Jersey. They held many demonstrations in our town and held many meetings throughout the hills. As per KKK policy, often they would lynch local African Americans to set an example, not only to the other African Americans, but also as an example of their principle and resolve. That's a very common story too when you're in rural New Jersey. It's like, don't go too far into the woods, there's Klan meetings out there, shit like that. See, I asked one of my friends in middle school, I was like, what would you do if we went out into the woods to smoke weed and we found a Klan rally suddenly, dude? What would you do? And he was like, I would just play it cool and be like, give me your robe, brother. Where's my robe? just act like you're supposed to be here. Act like you're in the federal government too. The Devil's Tree was more secluded in those times before the development spread across the mountain like a plague. It sat in a very isolated section of woods and fields, far from the prying eyes of the police. The Devil's Tree was the site of many of the KKK's meetings and hangings. The evil energy around the tree comes from the souls of dead men and women who were killed by this vile organization. If you look at the picture you posted online, the leftmost branch extends almost parallel to the ground. This was the hanging branch, the old hanging branch. Pretty freaky and true stuff. Pretty true and honest stuff, dude. To freak ourselves out, sometimes my friends and I would drive down the road at night. At night telling them? Whatever. When the moon is a full red harvest moon, and the wind is blowing just right, it looks like there might be bodies hanging from the branch, slowly swaying in the breeze. By Rob Schmidt. Let's look at that hanging branch. Yep, that's it. All right, that's definitely the one right there, dude. Can't miss it. Next. Creepy Campfire Tales of New Jersey by Mark Skierman. When I was young, I belonged to that group of misfits that never quite reached the honor of becoming a Boy Scout. Not that I didn't complete the requirements in the Cub Scout manual of tying a slip knot or carving a piece of wood into a racing car in hopes to win me a trophy. I was just one of those kids that felt out of place in those gawky blue uniforms and yellow neckerchiefs, marching in the Memorial Day parade, convincing myself I was part of America the Beautiful. I did everything I could to be part of the Scout tribe. I subscribed to Boy's Life, the magazine for the future Boy Scout, which held untold fortunes just by selling greeting cards door to door in hopes of getting that Schwinn 10 speed. They even advertised live monkeys for sale at $7.95, of which I remembered my old man saying, when I said I wanted one, "It'll piss and shit all over the house." What did I know as a floundering Cub Scout? I merely followed orders from the higher-ups. Instead, I ordered 100 stamps from around the world for 10 cents. I thought it was a good deal until I started receiving stamps once a month at $6.97 per package. In kid terms, it was like paying off a Cadillac with an allowance of $1 every time I cleaned my room. Needless to say, when the old man caught wind of my investments, my room was cleaned and inspected on a daily basis. Maybe that's when I realized the scouting way just might not be the right regiment, might not be the regiment I'm being made to follow, dude. It's not good for me. Don't work. Dude, live monkeys for $7.95. I would buy the whole troop and just release them somewhere inconvenient. Walmart, for example. They wouldn't even notice at Walmart. Just put them in a diaper. It's not a problem. Camping was another story. Getting out in the wilds of New Jersey was always an experience. We would camp at Picatinny, Round Valley, and the Pine Barrens. Each trip was a memorable one that still evokes laughs, and more often than not, embarrassment. For some reason, whenever I would tell my parents me and the gang were going camping, they would be more than happy to send me on my way, packed with more shit than I could ever use. As I look back on it, I guess they just wanted me to do something rather than just build monster models in the basement. As we all know, camping is the one vice that leaves us all wide open for any and all adventures. The feeling of being huddled around a campfire, with unknown darkness all around you, is enough to unnerve the calmest of souls. The snap of a twig in pitch blackness can easily conjure up demons, devils, and legends that are recounted endlessly around the burning embers. Who hasn't heard the story of the escaped mental patient with the hook arm left dangling on the car door handle, or the legend of the headless horseman? You know, he's out looking for a head to chop. And who hasn't, at one time or another, whittled sharp spears for protection against the unknown while listening to campfire tales? Along with these legends that are told throughout the world around every campfire, there are legends told only around the firelit campsites in New Jersey in the dead of night. Be it a Boy Scout camp, a youth group, or weekend warriors out for bear. You will not hear these tales anywhere else. From the darkest corners of New Jersey come unique and haunting tales of ghosts, Bigfoots, murders, and mystery. My first camping experience were pitched at Camp Kiamesha, located near the border of Stokes Forest in Sussex County. This former YMCA summer camp, which is now closed to the public, was owned by the Newark Young Men's Christian Association and built as a summer retreat during the 1930s. But the real legend of Kiamesha starts a few hundred years ago when the property was owned by John Snyder. The only remaining traces of the Snyder estate were a few stones and pottery shards that were exposed by campers during the 40s. They were located a few hundred feet from the chapel on the campgrounds, but John Snyder is not the legend in this story. Even though 11 members of the Snyder family were massacred by Indians on the property, the real legend of Kiamesha was a fellow named Tom Quick. The legend of Tom Quick. According to an old 50s Camp Kiamesha handbook that was given to Weird NJ, Tom Quick was born in 1734 and settled along the Delaware River, the first white settlement of the area. Young Quick was soon learning the hunting techniques of the local Indian tribe and roaming the hills along the Delaware, rather than working at his old man's grist mill. He got along with the Indians, with whom he shared the catch of the day along the river. When the French and Indian Wars began, the Indians suddenly turned against the pale-faced settlers, fearing their encroachment on native territory. Tom Quick and his family had been on the river one day when the Indians, dressed in full war paint, attacked the unsuspecting fishermen. Using rifles, the Indians mortally shot Tom's father and wounded Tom in the leg. The others escaped injury and managed to drag Tom to safety. Upon returning for their father, they witnessed the Indians scalping the elder Quick and cutting off his head. According to the handbook, after performing cruelties upon him too hideous for description, they killed him and held a powwow over the dead body. At the sound of the scalp whoop, whoop whoop, and fiendish rejoicing of the savages, Tom became frantic and swore that he would never be at peace so long as Indians could be found on the banks of the Delaware. It's really cool. Get him! 2 years after the French and Indian Wars, Tom was drinking at a local tavern on the Neversink when he met an intoxicated Indian named Muskwink, who boasted of killing a white man along the Delaware and produced the silver buttons that were on the sleeves of Tom's scalpless father. Quick, in a drunken rage, pulled a musket off the wall, marched the Indian outside the tavern, and shot him right in the head, sending him off to the happy hunting ground, baby. Quick went back inside, finished his rum, and left town. Shortly thereafter, Quick spied an Indian family in a canoe along the Delaware. A man, his squaw, and 2 children. Quick ordered them all ashore, killing the man with 1 shot, and according to the handbook, made his way with the others by means of a tomahawk. After realizing he better lay low on murdering Indians in the open, Tom proceeded to perform many more killings in secret. One trick he used was to stalk the Indians hunting deer. After a shot was heard, Quick would wait until the Indian hunter was skinning his fresh kill, then shoot him in the back. Afterward, he would conceal the body and take the deer carcass home, along with the Indian's gun. He would often befriend Indians that wandered into the settlement and invite them on a hunting trip, according to the handbook, from which the Indian would never return. This is the Dick Cheney handbook. Now you have to think about who was writing this handbook for Kiamesha. I mean, this is a pretty heavy tale to be telling preteen kids around the campfire. I'm assuming it wasn't an American Indian who wrote this text. It makes you wonder who exactly were the savages that wandered the Sussex County hills. When we talked to the Walpack History Society, we learned that old Tom Quick was also fond of killing Indian babies. I'd say he was more infamous than famous, said Leonard Peck. There are many stories about him. There are hidden caves in the area that are called Quick's Caves. He actually lived in Milford, Milford, Pennsylvania, across the Delaware, but spent a lot of time here on the Jersey side. The pond at Camp Kiamesha is named after him. In his honor. Everyone take off your hats, we're singing the national anthem. Oh, it's funny, dude. Tom Quick, the founder of New Jersey. The great nation of New Jersey. Jamie in the chat, what up, dude? Vinny Panthers, a whoop whoop out there. Luminate Zero says, damn, I recall old websites that were made by real people who have interests. These days, it's all a corpse and products website. Website. Also, last stream was great. Thanks, man. Trying to get it back on track. I want to do more paranormal interviews. It's hard to find people because it's not just finding people with a paranormal story. First of all, the story's got to be good. Sorry, you have to have seen something, you know? It's just the fact of the matter, or it's gonna suck. Second, they have to have some, like, charisma and personality. Because otherwise, the story's gonna suck. I can make it happen, but, like, how else are you gonna get an hour, 2 hour long story out of it? I can, like, pull a regular person along for 15 minutes to a half hour. I don't know. But then the third thing that is kind of needed is a decent microphone. When you combine all this stuff, it's like impossible to get people. Miserable. Trying out here, dude. Yeah, the website thing is weird. Like, what websites do you go on? YouTube. The rest are just stupid social media sites. Oh. It's messed up. Tain't right. You'd think that there would be some moral or befitting retribution to end the story of Tom Quick, but as it turns out, old Tom even wreaks havoc on the local Indian population from beyond his grave. According to the handbook, excuse me. Doing dabs over here, baby. Oh, that's a good one. Oh, man, I love it. According to the handbook, Tom finally died of smallpox. The Indians discovered his grave, dug him up, and held a powwow over his corpse. They keep doing that. Maybe if they would stop powwowing over corpses, they'd still be fine, dude. This caused the smallpox to spread among the tribes, resulting in more deaths than Tom had ever hoped to effect while alive. Got him! Jeez. Tom hoped to kill 100 Indians before he died, said Peck, but legend has it he only got to 99 before his death. It is said that he knew he had smallpox and would rub blankets on his body, then give them to the Indians. Yeah, I think the smallpox blankets, these days I seem to think a lot of people find that to be a myth. And you know, this is perfectly easy to attribute that to Tom Quick here. Like, it makes for a great story. But it's not like you have to rub your body on blankets to give people with no immunity smallpox. Like, they're getting the smallpox. They're getting it either way. They need blankets. Didn't matter, dude. They're doing powwows over smallpox corpses. It's gonna happen. In the town of Milford, Pennsylvania, stands a monument to Tom Quick that has been recently removed for cleaning and rededication. We didn't dedicate this thing enough. This guy, Tom Quick, He was on the ball, and we gotta dedicate this shit again. Everybody, put your hand over your heart and take off your hat. Although there seems to be a problem putting the memorial back up, Native Americans have opposed the monument being placed in the center of town because they feel a tribute to an Indian killer is offensive. You can still visit the Tom Quick Tavern in Milford, though, if you'd like to voice an opinion on the matter. Man, I want to go there. That's sweet. Judge Cropsey. Other legends surround Camp Kiamiyasha. Weird NJ reader Lawrence Morrow remembers some of the tales from his KK days. I thought they were going to add another K for a second, dude. Oh, boy. Get away from that tree! Get away from the tree! The camp leader during the 50s was Moose. Anyone who remembers him is definitely a source for information. Jim Fithian lived across the lake and composed some camp songs he played for us at the chapel organ. Across the lake there was the legend of Judge Cropsey, who kept the dismembered parts of prisoners he sentenced to on his premises jail. Kept the dismembered parts of prisoners he sentenced to his on... Okay, I'm having a hard time reading this. He sentenced the prisoners to his on-premises jail in his base. He literally sentenced prisoners to his crawl space, is what I'm gathering out of this. On-premises jail? Like, okay, that makes sense. But it's in the basement? He was putting people in his crawl space, dog. This is judges. Average judge, dude. Three-Fingered Willie is also a Kiamiyasha story told around the old campfire. Kiamiyasha is unquestionably creepy. I was there about 8 years back. The cabins are decaying, and one would imagine squatters lurking about. Three-Fingered Willie, dude. I didn't get Three-Fingered Willie. The legend of the Mary Post tree. Maybe I should be reading who's writing this crap. Like, do you care? This one doesn't even have an author, dude. It just made this crap up. This is by Sean and Eliza B. The Legend of the Mary Post Tree. At the Glen Gray Boy Scout camp in Mawa, they tell the story of a Revolutionary War woman named Mary Post, Bloody Mary. British officers caught her, thinking she was a spy for the colonists. They decided to hang her, along with 2 others. Before she was hanged, she cursed the tree, saying that anyone who tried to get rid of the tree she was being hanged from would be hurt or killed. Nowadays, people have tried to chop it down and succeeded, but with a lot of deaths. People still say they can hear her wandering around the field where she was hanged. I knew someone who tried to get rid of the stump and broke a leg. The story of Mary Post is frequently told to Cub Scouts at the camp. Haunted Cabin Seance by Elizabeth D. There's a haunted cabin in Beamerville, and it's owned by the 4-H Club. I've been there, and the cabin is scary. In the upstairs rooms, there are no lights, but there are odd sinks and lockers lying around. Downstairs in the wall, there appears to be the ends of 2 ornate caskets. I don't think the wall is thick enough to hold 2 coffins, but that's what it looks like. Anyway, there are many different stories as to why the place is haunted. This is the one I've heard the most. A man lived in the cabin with his family. One day, he was cleaning his gun downstairs, and he accidentally shot his son who was standing on the balcony. Then he shot himself. I have no idea if this story is true. In fact, I highly doubt it, but there is one story about the cabin I do believe because my sister was there. The 4-H Club used to have this camping program for 13 and 14-year-olds called Teen Adventure. They would go hiking, biking, or rafting during the day, and at night, they would sleep in the cabin. On one particular night, one of the girls, her name was Carrie, suggested that they have a seance. They went through the upstairs rooms and found some candles. Carrie decided to be the medium. After a few minutes of nothing happening, Carrie began speaking in a man's voice, which was unusual because her voice was really high-pitched and annoying, but the voice didn't sound contrived. Everyone looked around, but they couldn't find any other source for the voice. It was coming out of Carrie. Basically, she said, "Get the hell out of my house before it's too late!" The kids were too freaked to leave, though, because the cabin is way up in the woods, and they were afraid to go outside. The next morning, when they went outside, they noticed that the expression on the carving stone face on the outside of the cabin had changed overnight. Its usual somber expression had changed to a smile. Supposedly, the story ends with Carrie committing suicide in a mental hospital, but I don't really believe that part. The Island of Lost Boys by Nina. At a local lake in my town, there's an island in the middle. About 50 years ago, 8 kids in their teens, to celebrate one of the boys' birthdays, took a midnight visit to it. They all brought their sleeping bags and fleshlights, and soon after they rowboated over there, they had a fire going. I'm sorry. I'm just sorry that I'm such a 12-year-old child. The next morning, the kids weren't at the house, so their parents were searching. They checked everywhere, but not a sign of them were found until they checked the... I'm still laughing about fleshlights. Forgive me, Lord. Until they checked the island and saw only their sleeping bags. The kids never returned, and no one had ever seen them ever again. The creepy thing is, though, in the winter, when all the leaves have fallen, you can see 8 trees in a row, the same height, and they all look identical. They turned into trees, dog. You better chop them trees open. There's boys in them trees, dog. Damn. Camp Nobi's... How the hell? What the... Why did they do this? Camp Nobi Bosco. Nobi Bosco? Do you put the hyphens, or are they just doing that to, like, help me in some vain attempt? Camp Nobi Bosco, where Jason vacations. By MM. On June 13th, 1980, a movie opened which would make a real splash in the horror film genre and keep more than a few young campers wide awake all night shivering in their pup tents. The movie was called Friday the 13th, and the plot revolved around the machete-wielding, hockey mask-wearing young maniac named Jason, who stalked the grounds of the fictitious Camp Crystal Lake. Audiences around the country were soon screaming in the theater. Screaming in their theater seats, creaming in the seats, clinging to their dates for dear life. As the seemingly remorseless Jason hacked away at campers and counselors alike, until just about every character in the film was eviscerated. This relatively new, more gruesome, and some would say senseless trend in on-screen violence became quite popular with young adult audiences, and Friday the 13th not only spawned a seemingly infinitely string of sequels, and even a TV show, but also gave rise to a number of copycat slasher films. We're not getting to victims yet. Films which would persist for the next decade. The original Friday the 13th was shot over a 3-month period from September to October 1979 at a Boy Scout camp outside of Blairstown, New Jersey, called Nobi Bosco. I was quite shocked to learn this fact recently, as I had spent 2 blood-curdling weeks there myself as a Boy Scout in the mid-70s, though the scariest thing I had ever witnessed there was a finless brown floating in the swimming area of the lake. Got him, dude. Sounds like this guy's never actually seen Friday the 13th, because if he did, he would know that Jason isn't the killer in the first movie. Actually... The film's budget was a mere $500,000, but it would eventually gross in excess of $37 million. The series of movies as a whole has taken in over $250 million. Director Sean Cunningham says Jason started as a gimmick at the end of that first one. Having him lurch up out of the water was a way of going out with a strong visual image. I didn't know that Jason would be stalking summer camps for the next 10 years. In the final sequence of the movie, the sheriff of the town tells Alice, the sole surviving camper of Jason's murderous rampage, "We didn't find any boy." To which Alice replies, "Then he's still there. Sleep tight, little campers." Boy Scout Ghosts of Camp Akawasan. I'm going to take this moment. I want to mention that... What the hell do I want to mention? It sounds like I'm about to shill. I wasn't going to shill. In New Jersey, there is a lot more rural area than people realize. There's a ton of it. There's a ton of just protected land. In the south is all swamps. That's where the Pine Barrens are in South Jersey. It's all swamps and pines and sand and parasites. It's kind of known in lore as like where like the criminals from like Philadelphia and Atlantic City would run off to escape capture. It's kind of known for being where there's a ton of military bases, so it's military people and farmers. There's farms, military bases, and the Pine Barrens. That's what that's kind of known for until you get to the shore. Once you get to the beach, things kind of change. In North Jersey, you have mountains going into New York. So that's like, yeah, it's forests and mountains up there. It's kind of known for where the affluent live. Where, like, the mafia people would live from New York. You know, where there's a lot of, like, Hasidic Jewish communities and things like that up there. So you have, you know, that sort of thing happening there. A lot of more, like, you know, ethnic strongholds. But that's the difference. When they talk about mountains in some of these, sometimes they're talking about the Pine Barrens. The Pine Barrens are the swamp. Then there's the mountains to the north. Fuck it. I'm gonna shill. I'm gonna shill right now. I got some t-shirts that I want to shill, dude. Check that out, dude. You can get this t-shirt. You yourself could have a Bigfoot t-shirt. There he is. Famous Patterson Gimlin all over t-shirt, dude. T-shirts for the t-shirt people. Is that the only one I got on hand that I can show you? I will show you. Oh, check this out. This one's cool too. There we have the Space Buddha t-shirt, dude. We got Space Buddha t-shirt. You can get these shirts from my Teespring, teespring.com/stores/Yakov-alive. Go into the description below if you want to find a link. Yeah, get them t-shirt. I need money badly. I need it. Things are difficult. Buy shirt. Anywho. Boy Scout Ghosts of Camp Akawasan by Anthony A. I have lived in West Milford almost all my life. When I was about 15 years old, I moved to a small private community in West Milford named Mountain Springs, located off of Macoupin Road. Not long after moving there, my friends and myself came across this abandoned camp. It was rumored that this camp was closed due to the deaths of 3 of the camp members who drowned in the small man-made lake that is part of the camp. The camp, which was called Camp Akawasan, resembles a scene from the Friday the 13th movie. Ironically, West Milford is one of the locations that was used in the production. On many of our youthful adventures in search of ghosts and spooks, we would walk around the camp at night. This place would give you a feeling of complete fear, and we couldn't get enough of it. Camp Akawasan was left in the same condition it was in its final day of operation. You could see where the books in the library hadn't been put back in the shelves from that day's return. Athletic mats were still left out in the gymnasium floor, dirty dishes still sitting in the kitchen counter. Things were left as if it was the end of the world, and people just hurried out as fast as they could go. One night, when I was there with friends, I had this feeling, and it was not a good one. I told my friends I didn't want to go to the camp's main building. After being teased, I decided to wait in the car for them. Wrong thing to do. While my friends were inside, I was in the car getting the scare of my life. I was sitting there in the car with the radio on, and all of a sudden I saw 3 people, or what looked to be people, floating across the front of this car. I was so scared. I realized, not having the keys to the car, that I needed to run. As I was running, I could hear the sounds of footsteps following me on the dirt road. When I got to the main road, Macoupin Road, I walked over to the local fire company. Ironically, the street address is 666 Macoupin Road, and waited for my friends to return. When they arrived, they explained that they didn't see anything, and they wouldn't return because the building wasn't scary. Let's just say I will never return either. I never did tell my friends this story. I guess I was afraid they would think I was crazy and make fun of me. Until this day, they still don't know what happened to me that night. Among the many stories I have heard and or experienced in West Milford, even those of the well-known Clinton Road, I have never been so damn scared in all my life. Go check it out for yourself, if you dare! The Floating Ghost of Camp Linwood McDonald. Camp Linwood McDonald. By Sean D. When I was about 10 years old, there was this camp I went to with a few buddies of mine. It was called Camp Linwood McDonald. Boy, was this a hotspot for some screwed up shit. The very first time I went to that camp, I was warned of the unknown forest. It was a part of the campgrounds where people wandered in and never wandered out. There were legends that the woods would just swallow you up. According to one of the camp directors, a local road goes through part of the woods, and the police have to close the road at night because there were too many empty cars found along the roadside by cops in the morning. Followed by reports of missing persons. But that was small potatoes compared to what a good 20 of us saw floating over the camp lake. A ghost maiden in flowing robes floating right over the goddamned lake. The adults were more scared than us kids. They dragged us to the cabins as fast as they could. Anyways, I know my friends, and I ran into lots of strange stuff there. I know my friends and I did. They did. Exploring Glen Lake Lodge by Bill. As a teenager, my friends and I experienced numerous accounts of terror in this abandoned lodge called the Glen Lake Lodge. The lodge just recently has been made into apartments and are occupied, but I still have nightmares about this place. One time around 1986, a girl and I decided to venture inside the lodge at night with nothing but a single candle and Ouija board. To get into the vacant lodge, you had to go through a basement door and find your way up to a creepy staircase. Now this lodge was huge. It had dozens of bedrooms, all furniture intact, offices, a giant kitchen with all utensils, and a huge lobby. We made our way to the lobby and set up the board and began our game. We began by placing our fingers on the pointer and asked if there was any spirits present. Immediately after the question was asked, it spelled out random letters of no significance. We asked again and again. The Ouija continued to violently spell out the same letters. This was getting frustrating to both of us, and apparently the spirit too. Then I asked if there was a spirit present to give us some kind of sign. With that, from the back room, the kitchen area, we heard the sound of metal crash to the floor. It must have been pots and pans and those sorts of things. Leaving the Ouija board and candle behind, we fled through the creepy basement and out the door. On behalf of all scouts and horror enthusiasts, by Bill M. I am writing this letter to inform you of a situation that I feel needs immediate attention. Friday the 13th, one of the most popular horror films to date, was filmed right here in New Jersey. Part 1, as well as the opening scene of Part 2, were filmed at Camp Nobibosco, a Boy Scout camp near Blairstown. Remnants of the filming are still present within the camp. The original Camp Crystal Lake sign, the name of the camp in the movie, is hanging in the trading post in one of the 80-year-old cabins at Camp Nobibosco. In addition, all of the buildings that were used in the movie are still preserved at the camp. Unfortunately, this historical landmark is in danger of destruction. It has recently come to my attention that the council that owns this property, the Northern New Jersey Council BSA, has been letting this camp deteriorate. This matter is of great concern for me for several— Is this literally just about, like, how awesome the camp is? It is. Whatever. The fact of the matter is, like, this website is that I'm reading is from 2001. Most of this shit is gone. It gone, dude. It's a bummer. Is that it for that section? That was the only go there at night section about spooky places. Let's see. I think that was the end of it. No, it's not. Seriously? I'm having a hard time because this image is broken. I'm just like clicking links in a broken image. Okay, we got one more in this section. How long have I been streaming for? I don't know. Hour? I'd go longer. I'd go forever, dude. Don't tempt me. Don't tempt me. I kind of just want to go until my my GF gets home. How do I look on camera right now? Goofy as hell. I noticed I had the dumbass piece of hair sticking up probably for the past half hour. Looking goofy as hell. It's fine. It doesn't matter. Nothing matters. Life sucks. Okay, one more. In this section. I want to go— dude, I just want to read all of this. I feel like I could. I'm that into this. Menlo Abandoned Mental Institution. The following is a 100% true story, and I thought you might like to hear about it. About 5 years ago, when I was a senior in high school, 3 of my friends and myself decided to go exploring. We all live in Aberdeen and had heard the local stories about Igo Road, the KKK Road. Hey, take the left down the KKK Road, etc. Igo wasn't anything out of the ordinary, and I was on the KKK Road only briefly. However, my friend Bob told us about the abandoned mental hospital in Menlo Park. We were intrigued by his stories, so we decided to check it out. We all drove up there one night. Behind the hospital is an apartment complex, so we parked in there and we were on our way. First of all, the moon was illuminating everything that night. Pretty sure it was a full moon, which added to the creepiness. So the silhouette of the building in the middle of the field was pretty intimidating. We slowly made our way up to the building and entered. The inside was littered with debris. We checked out a few of the rooms, some of which still had furniture in them. We wanted souvenirs, so I found a form that had patients' names on it with a list of his medications and the utensils he was allowed to use for meals. Spoon, yes. Knife and fork, no. Just like me, dude. I turned in all my butter knives to the police so I didn't hurt myself, bro. We made our way into a large room that had a giant pentagram on the wall and what looked like bloodstains on the floor. Needless to say, that was a tad freaky. That, however, was only the tip of the iceberg of freaky things to come. We made our way down a corridor, which led to a door. This door went to the outside, a courtyard. Bob went out first and proceeded to come back in immediately. We had been looking for the way out because the place is so big we got a bit disoriented. We figured this way would let us out the front of the hospital, opposite from the rear where we had come in. Well, Bob comes back in to lead us out, but tells us not to look up. The way it was laid out was once we went inside, you could look up to your left and see the rest of the building, which was a couple of stories high. Of course, the first thing we all do, look up. On the roof was a group of people staring down at us. Spooky. Now Bob says they were all wearing black. I couldn't tell since it was dark, and all we could see was their outlines. Whatever they were wearing, we were defecating ourselves. Bob had told us stories of cults gathering there and stuff, so our first inclination was Satan worshippers. One guy was smoking a cigarette and just staring at us. We started walking quickly, looking for the exit, but we were fenced in. While we were walking and simultaneously praying and trying to get out, the group on the roof was slowly walking along with us. We counted about a half dozen or so of them, and we were absolutely petrified, as it was until we saw them stop and what looked to be the leader guy, cigarette man, talking to another guy. Petrified as it was until we saw them stop. Yeah, whatever. All of a sudden, that guy turns and walks away from them. We immediately realized that the guy was probably coming downstairs to do something to us, which probably wouldn't have been to say hello. So we ran like a bunch of scared little girls. We ran around the side of the building and decided to forget about trying to go through an opening in the fence and just go over the fence. We scampered up the fence where Matt got his watch caught and ended up losing it, but we weren't going to stop to look for it. We ran all the way to the car and didn't stop for anything. I swear that was a true story. I don't think I've ever been so scared in my life, except when my girlfriend is late getting her little friend. What the fuck? Looking back on it, it was pretty exciting. I wear it like a badge of courage every time someone tries to tell me a scary story. This one has topped most. There's tons, and frankly at this point, like the equivalent of these stories today is like urban exploration videos on YouTube. And when you watch those, a lot of the time they'll find people in buildings. You find like homeless people, spooky homeless people in buildings that want to scare you out. Like, that's a pretty normal thing. Phantom Bowlers of Greystone. I currently work at a psychiatric hospital in New Jersey. The abandoned wards and buildings on the grounds are strange and also quite depressing. When I first started working there, my supervisor at the time gave me a tour of the tunnels. I have never heard them referred to as the catacombs, okay? I saw the cots, beds, old stores, etc. But deep inside one tunnel is a full-size bowling alley. The pins and balls are still there. Of course, everything is in a state of deterioration. But it was very, very eerie. You could almost see the patients still bowling. It's cool. By Sandy B. Hold on. I need a moment. Hold your damn horses. Let everyone know, yeah. Also, you know, it's not just t-shirts. You can also pay me for nothing. You can also just give me money. No. Over there. These. Links. Streamlabs. CashApp. T-shirt. And here's another thing. If you give me money and tell me what to read, I'll read it. You don't even have to, it's not like you have to give me X amount of, and like, dude, I wish I could get paid by the hour, like minimum wage to read. I would love to do it. I would love to. But at this point, dude, if you give me any money, if you have like contributed to me at all, I'll read whatever you want. So just let me know. If you've already paid me, let me know. I need material. I'll read your goofy local bullshit about albinos and midgets. Where were we? Remembering the bin. The sanitarium, or the bin as we used to call it, was a mental hospital in Caldwell. According to the information I have gathered, it was closed down in the early 70s. I learned about it sometime in '88. A friend of mine took me up there, and for some strange reason, I was drawn to the place after that. I used to go up there with several different people on many occasions until moving out of the state. There was one main building, the largest one, which we used to climb to the roof of. From up there, you could see the rest of the network of buildings and a good view of the New York skyline. There were about 7 buildings altogether. We spent many hours exploring the hallways, stairwells, and rooms in the buildings. The whole place had an eerie feel to it, to say the least, but there was one building in particular that had an evil air surrounding it. I think it was a caretaker's quarters or administrative housing. Most of the time, when we went up there, it was dark out, but one time I was up there during the day with one other person, and we went into the house. The energy in there was very intense and very dark, more so than anywhere else in the complex. The building still had many remnants of the hospital, and it was quite obvious that the place was a loony bin. There were primitive-looking restraint devices, operating tables, even some physician's tools strewn about the place. There was definitely a strong presence there as well, that nobody I know who has been there can even describe. We never did have the nerve to check out the underground tunnels, even though we did find an entrance to them. The last time I went up there was in '94. The buildings had been demolished. There wasn't even a pile of rubble, just a large area of freshly turned soil. Only 2 buildings remained. One was a carriage house, and the other was the house with the evil air to it. After the other buildings had been torn down, whatever presence it was that kept us out of there seemed to have been gone. At that time, the land was being used as a compost site for Essex County municipalities. I don't know what has become of the land since then. After the buildings were gone, so was the appeal to go up there. Escaped lunatics come to call. In my hometown of Parsippany Greystone, a state mental facility for the insane sits off Route 10. I have friends who live near there and have told stories of people who have broken out. One person said that while she was watching her siblings, she heard knocking on the windows and doors, but assumed it was the wind, and there was a snowstorm raging outside. The next morning, they read about another breakout in the paper and went outside to discover footprints in the snow going to every door and window on the first floor. Near the hospital are old boarded-up buildings. It's rumored that these were used in the dark ages of mental treatment for torturing patients and electrocuting them. Also near Greystone is Zeke Road, which is rather dark and eerie at night. It's rumored that witches, the KKK, and Satan worshippers all have worshipping grounds off the road. They're all aware of each other and they just tolerate each other. This is your day. I get Tuesday. You get motherfucking Wednesday. Another friend once told me that she drove up there with some people and stumbled upon an old hunting lodge. When they went inside, there were swastikas and pentagrams painted on the walls. The next day, they wandered through the woods and came to a clearing. There were mounds that looked like shallow graves and a small stream near which they found what appeared to be human teeth from Matt Y and Parsippany. Me and my buddies, we would like bust into hunting lodges and stuff like that out in the middle of the woods. We never found any pentagrams or anything creepy like that. What we did find was weed. We smoked their weed. It was awesome. The Gooseman's Hidey Hole at Overbrook. Deep within Overbrook, something evil lurks. A half-human, half-goose creature makes its lair in one of the abandoned rooms. My friends and I stumbled upon this unholy abomination's hidey hole on a summer night and have never been the same. That's his picture right there, I guess. Looks like a goat, though. A nook under a dusty stairwell held right guard deodorant. Oh yeah, the Gooseman obviously seeks to cover its natural foul aroma. Foul. Ha, it's a pun. Ha, ho. Next to it, a serviceable hairbrush, which let us know that this half-breed was centaur-like with a human head of featherless hair. This half-breed. But, you say, these are normal things for any person to have. There's nothing remotely goose-like in what you describe. Well, listen to this. A heap of tattered clothes lay on the ground, no doubt tattered in order to fit the mutant's waddling physique. Surrounding them, webbed footprints and goose droppings. A yell of "Gooseman!" And we fled the scene. From Anonymous. Deep beneath an old asylum. Buzz says, sounds like a lot of clan activity for Jersey, and I'll be honest, dude, you would be surprised. If you've never been to South Jersey, like, I went to high school in the Pine Barrens. Kids were driving to school, farm kids, in their pickup trucks with Confederate flags waving from the back. Like, you'd think it's Alabama sometimes. It's very interesting. Deep beneath an old asylum. There's a huge mental hospital in a town not far from where I attend school. Anyway, it's a state-run mental hospital that I believe was built in the 20s. It has been in the local newspapers recently because of patient escapes and abuses by staff members. It covers a lot of acreage. And while we're talking about these escapes, they were talking about like someone knocking on windows on a snowstorm. Like, that dude froze in the middle of the woods. I just want to make that clear. He was never found. It's what it sounds like, at least. It covers a lot of acreage, and on the property there are numerous abandoned buildings. One particular building is very secluded and very abandoned. To say that the building is large would be a tremendous understatement. The building is huge. It's 4 stories high and has numerous wings. My friend Brian told me that he has been in there when he was in high school with a bunch of friends. The cops had busted him, and his friends, and they later told them that escaped patients hide out in there, suicide victims are found in there quite often, and that tunnels run for miles underneath the property, connecting all the buildings to each other. It's nasty. So, we all headed out to my friend Bill's house to get some flashlights and backpacks. At around 10:45 p.m., we loaded up the Volvo station wagon and began our journey out to the abandoned insane asylum. From where we parked the car, we would walk to the abandoned building. We were all walking, and my heart was beating faster and the tension was getting thicker. For some reason, I thought we would get there. Everyone would chicken out, and we would leave. I really didn't believe that we would really go through with it. We made our way up to the building and saw it looming there in the darkness. Right about now, I was getting very, very nervous. All of the hundreds of windows had rusty chain-linked fencing bolted over the old glass, except for one that Bill led us to. The window was swung outward, providing easy access to the inner sanctum of the old asylum. When we were all inside, the first room with the window, I noticed the smell. As I am writing this, I can still remember the smell exactly. The air was very thick and warmer than outside, and it smelled like heavy mildew and dampness. Bill led us out into the hallway. I swear I have never been that scared before in my life. It was intense. The hallway was long, and very dark. The floor had papers and old drawers on it, and there were many rooms shooting off from each side of the hallway. In any one of them, I feared an escaped mental patient would jump out and attack us or even kill us. Bill led us slowly, although at times not slow enough, down the hallway to an old, dark room. Inside that room, there were huge filing cabinets and drawers filled with manila envelopes. Each envelope contained 4x5 negatives of old mental patients. They were from 1971, and being that our posse was full of photo majors, they didn't hesitate to load their backpacks with them. I thought of taking a few, but wasn't really interested after a quick consideration. They were way too creepy. Now at this point, I was really scared, and the entire place was freaking me out. If they wanted to get the hell out of there right then, I would have been all in favor. The next thing you know, Bill tells us we're going in the basement. Ah shit, not the fucking basement, I thought. He led us back out into the hallway, and we made our way to the old stairwell. We all feared that if we shined the flashlight behind us, that we would see someone standing down the hallway, perhaps an escaped mental patient following us. That thought sent shivers up my spine, and still does. How Bill knew his way around so well, with nothing but light from a flashlight, was beyond me. So we found the old stairwell and slowly made our descent, not knowing what lurked below. There was broken glass on the stairs, and each footstep made a loud crunching sound. On the lower portion of the stairs lay an old mattress, which we carefully walked over. Now we were at the bottom. Here there was a T intersection in the hallway. These were the tunnels that led to different buildings and wings. We shined the flashlight to the right and to the left, and it went as far as we could see. Bill led us off to the right, and we began walking. The walls were all concrete, along with the floor, which was covered with a thin layer of water and sludge. Unlike the ground floor we had come in on, there were no rooms off this hallway. We walked around 75 feet down the hallway when we came to another walkway that went to the right. Bill told us that's where the holding cells were. He shined the light up the elevated walkway, and there were the holding cells for the criminally insane. The cage-like cells were an eerie sight, not to mention a grim reminder that at one point in time, in the very hallways where we walked, dangerous people once lived. My only hope was that none of them were still occupying this building while we were in there. Onward, we went down the tunnel hallway, I would say another 50 or 60 feet past, and we came to a corner. Right around the bend sat two very old wheelchairs. They looked to be from the 1930s or 40s. They were both facing the same direction, and were very ominous looking. I wondered why everything lay abandoned here. It was almost like they left everything as it was, never to bother with it again. We walked through another room which appeared to be at one time an old kitchen, judging from the old freezers and stovetops. Bill led us out of the old kitchen into an adjacent room. He showed us old bottles of saline and medicine. Again, I couldn't believe the authorities just abandoned this stuff. Very weird. He also told us that the other hallway, which led to another wing, where he had seen human-sized cribs in old mildew-ridden straitjackets. I had heard of human-sized cribs before, and Brian had also seen them that night he got busted. Human-sized, that's a weird way to put that. I guess they mean man-sized, dude-sized. Suddenly, Bill told us all to stand completely still and not to make any sound. We all did what we were told, and we thought we heard something coming from the other hallway. I don't think it was our imagination, because I too thought I heard the faint sound of glass crunching. We decided we better get out of there, and I was all for that idea. I'm not sure what made that noise. It could have been a rat scurrying, or maybe it was something more dangerous. Regardless, I was not interested in finding out. We made our way as quietly and quickly as possible back through the old kitchen and past the wheelchairs to the long hallway. We walked back down, trying to avoid the gray sludge in the concrete floor. Finally, we came to the stairwell. Part of me wondered what was past the stairwell, down the other hallway, which we hadn't explored. The large part of me just wanted to get the hell out of there. We carefully climbed over the mattress and up the stairs. Now we were back on the ground floor. This part really was uncomfortable, with all those rooms. Bill led us back to the room with the window, and one by one we climbed out. The weight was off my shoulders and my heart was beginning to beat at a normal pace again. We loaded up into the Volvo and returned to Bill's house. Bill took out a light table and everyone looked at the negatives of the mental patients. On each negative, there were 2 photos. One was a front shot and the other was a side view. Each patient was holding up a set of numbers like in a mugshot. Some, I guess, weren't able to do this on their own because you could see another hand, probably that of a nurse, holding the sign for them. Some of the patients looked very scary, and it was strange to know that we had been in the same building that they were. Some of the crazy people were even making faces at the camera. Very strange. I'm not sure if it had occurred to us at the time, but if our flashlights had quit on us while we were in there, we would have been seriously screwed, especially if we were in the basement tunnels. There would have been no way we would have been able to find our way out of the dark. There are literally hundreds of rooms in that building, and only one of them, to our knowledge, had a window that we could get out of. It's really hard to describe the size of the building and do it justice with words. The thought of an escaped mental patient finding us, or coming across a dead body, was none too appealing either. The thought of what we did is still running through my mind even days later. It was definitely one of the scariest things that I've ever done, and I sure as hell don't plan on going back anytime soon. From JPH. Those are the asylum stories. And with that, I think we get to the end of the only go there at night section. Let me double check. Yep. Next is Roadside Weird Side, which is more of a fun one, I think. I think it's less spooky, more fun. Let's just take a look at some of these labels here. We got Cookie Jar House. We got that Cookie Jar House. We got the Eggo Mat. Go to the Eggo Mat. Y'all about to head to the Eggo Mat. Y'all need anything? We got the Jet in the Woods. We got Midgetville, baby! Midgetville! The Palace of Depression. Oh, My House. Route 23 Mystery Poles. The Dover Mental Cage. And Shirtwood Forest. If you ever go to Shirtwood Forest, buy a shirt. teespring.com/stores/yakov-alive. Feel free. So thank you very much for joining me. I'm gonna get the hell out of here. I might do another one of these tonight. I'm enjoying this. I don't often enjoy crap like this. I'm enjoying it. So yeah, Planet Zero in the chat says it's just playful, spooky ghost cosplay. That's true. We got Polak in the chat. SP's Skinwalker Outdoors. Make sure you give him a sub also. Might stream us playing Civilization 5, or is that the most boring sounding stream you've ever heard of in your life? Just read more of this? Maybe I'll just read more of this. I'm not sure. Thank you, everybody. Please donate and buy shirts. What can I say? Buy shirts.